But I think what would also be interesting for people is not only how to create courses, but also how to learn effectively from courses,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is also difficult. Do you have any tips or maybe any mistakes people do when they, let's say they buy a course from you on Udemy and they want to learn from it? What approach would you tell them, or what tips would you give them to learn from the courses as effectively as possible?
Yeah, so we've talked about right now about consistency, right? About trying to not only publish one course, but be kind of resilient and keep on doing it until you are successful. This obviously applies in scenarios where you are actually learning something. You want to be consistent. You don't want to just start a course or a tutorial and then ditch it afterwards because you have lost your interest or you have found maybe something of more interest. So what I would actually advise you is to set some kind of deadlines, right, for each and every activity that you set your mind to. I think that deadlines and goals that are attached to deadlines make the most sense and make you responsible of what you are trying to achieve. If you just set your mind into buying a course, right, and you buy it and then you start learning it and you have no schedule, no daily schedule maybe, or no end goal with a deadline, you will just end up procrastinating. And I've done this. I think that we have all done this, and I think that this is one of the most difficult things to pass and to overpass, right? You have to be consistent and you have to have that kind of responsibility to have this kind of deadline, right, in which you say by the end of the month I want to have finished this course, right? I want it done. And I think that this kind of approach, right, of always procrastinating and not finishing things that we even buy. I think you have heard this on Twitter. This is already a common
Tutorial
phrase
hell.
that, yeah. But also, the fact that people buy Udemy courses and they actually never start them. Not talking about actually finishing them, right? So there were people saying that I've bought 2 or 3 or 4 courses, 10 courses, and I haven't even started them. That's one thing that you should get past. Right, you should obviously start it and being consistent about it and try to have this kind of mentality of finishing it. And I can tell you that from the statistics from Udemy, I can tell you that only a very small margin of my students actually finish the course. And again, you might say as a teacher, that's disappointing, but no, that's human nature. That's what we do. We always start something and we end up not finishing it. So there's a huge chunk, I think maybe 40 or 50% that actually don't get past the first half of the course, right? An 11-hour course. So this is really important, right? Because this speaks of the mentality of the actual students, right? And in fact of ourselves, right? Because we kind of start something and we don't finish it. So the most important advice that I would give you is that to set a deadline. I want to finish this by the end of the month, by the end of the year. And when that time comes and you see that you haven't finished it, you will feel bad about yourself and you'll say that I had a responsibility, I have failed myself, and this shouldn't happen anymore, right? So you try to go from there. Other people actually have joined the trend of 100 days of code, and I'm sure that you're familiar with it. And that basically tries to give you some social responsibility, right? That you have started something and that you do not want to feel bad about not tweeting again about it, because it would mean that you have stopped learning and that you are not a dependable person, or you're just not really that good about keeping promises, right? So I think that this is something as a first tip I would give to everybody starting out.
Yeah, buying courses and also books and not finishing them is really common. I'm also guilty of this myself.
Yeah,
For
me
example,
too.
I needed a while until I really started working through the Clean Code book by Uncle Bob, because it's work, of course, and it's easy to just not look at it anymore. And as I already mentioned, what works best for me is scheduling this actually into a calendar and saying, okay, at this time I work on this, even if it's just for 30 minutes or an hour per day or whatever. And actually, this is also the idea of the app I've built, this little app I have on the Play Store. I was not planning to promote this here, but the idea of the app is that you set time goals for specific tasks. for each day or for certain days of the week. For example, you want to continue this course for 30 minutes per day. And this app gives you this timer every day that you have to finish, and then it shows you how many, like a habit tracker, it shows you how many days in a row you finish this and when you slacked off, and it gives you statistics. So this was the idea for this app, because I had problems with the same thing, not finishing these courses, buying them and then not finishing them, or not even starting them. Of course, that's great for the person who sells the course. Maybe it's not good for his ego, but when someone doesn't look at the course, he probably also doesn't refund it because
Yeah.
they don't know if it's good or bad. So from a egoistical point of view, this is actually useful. But of course, for someone who buys the course, it's not a good approach.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to find a way to handle this, and people just have to experiment with this. Different things work for different people. As you already
Yeah.
said, this social accountability is something that works for many people. Some people, they just have to announce it publicly, and then they have enough pressure behind it to actually finish this.
Exactly.
It's not really my approach, or at least I haven't tried it. But yeah, people just have to experiment a bit because they need to find a way to actually finish the stuff. Otherwise, you don't really get ahead, or don't buy courses. This is also an option. If you know that you always buy these courses and then you don't start them or you don't finish them, then maybe just stop buying courses. Of course, for people like us who want to sell courses, it's not great, but for some people, courses are maybe not the right approach. And you can also learn the stuff by Googling and looking through Stack Overflow answers and applying the stuff yourself and practicing on your own app. But yeah, you just have to see what works for you.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to add, but we already said this before, that it's also for someone who is learning from courses, it's important to not only watch it passively, but actually apply the stuff you learn there.
Yeah.
And often the instructor of the course already gives you opportunities to do that. They give you little practice examples or code you can practice on. But what I'm also a fan of, for example, when I go through Google Code Labs, which are these small text tutorials, what I like is I apply it to their example code first, but then I immediately go ahead and apply it to my own project if there's an opportunity for that. Because this is then, it's like the next step, it's like the next difficulty level. Because
Yeah.
then you don't have a solution for that. It's like an additional homework. You have to often change this example in a certain way to be able to apply it to your code, because your code is different. So I think this is a nice way to practice this. And it's also fun because it's your own project, and working on your own project is usually at least a little bit fun, even if it's difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are good points on how to learn effectively from courses.